Hi there. Welcome to listeners from across the globe. My name is Alyson Noune, and this is Best Damn Reality, a new podcast intending to help bridge the spiritual and material worlds. Each week, I invite you to join me and to suspend all preconceived notions, to open your minds and your hearts to seeing everything from a much vaster perspective. Should you be enticed enough, please also consider visiting me on my YouTube channel and on my business Facebook page, both under the name Alyson Noune. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey. Good afternoon. It is Friday, February 23rd, 2024 here in Sarasota, Florida. This is intended to be a reboot episode of my podcast called Best Damn Reality. I launched the podcast on July 4th, 2020, and had almost a full year of recordings where I released a recording, I think almost every week. I'd have to look back. And certainly did not intend to go on hiatus or to pause. But since 2020, reality, and I use that word in quotations, has shifted dramatically, hugely. And for somebody, myself, that had not paid attention to hardly any media for the previous 10 years prior to 2020, I had given up my TV in 2008 and had a spiritual awakening in 2010 that quite literally revealed to me the magnitude of the work that I had to do within and the massive rewiring of my own brain and the realignment of everything within myself post-awakening. And as a result, I just stopped naturally. All media. It wasn't even a challenge. Even after I gave up my TV, I was still a sports fan and a movie fan, and all of that fell away almost overnight, damn near overnight. So when the things and the events of 2020 happened, it began a massive awareness, an expanded awareness of what was going on in the present, what I call the present 3D mainstream reality, and then a massive reconciliation of what I learned. Because I had gone down the rabbit hole in, post-Iraq war in the early 2000s. Not post, but like shortly after we started and we invaded Iraq on the tails of 9/11. I went down the rabbit hole in the early 2000s and didn't need much convincing of how fucked I perceived America to be, because it was clear that the surface level story was horseshit for anybody, again, with half of a thinking brain and the ability to independently look at information and independently use their own brain, not what outside media sources was telling us the story is, but to use your own brain and put together what was happening or not happening according to your own brain. And so anybody that was able to do that knew shit was not lining up with regards to 9/11 and how we reacted, and what none of it was lining up. So I knew that things were pretty fucked, because I couldn't believe that we sacrificed that many thousands of our own people and then further initiated a war where tens of thousands, maybe even as many as hundreds of thousands of lives were lost. All because of what clearly to me was a massive, I don't even know what to call it. What I now will say, looking back, is an enormous piece of the globalist agenda puzzle. Of course, at that time, I couldn't label it that. Now, I had gone down the rabbit hole of the U.S., but I had absolutely zero awareness or idea of the fact that this was very much a part of a much, 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 much bigger plan that had been in the works for a much, much, much longer time than just that period of the late 90s, early 2000s. And so when 2020 happened, and I saw through that shit in the first week, for the first few days, I have to admit, I was, like everybody, trying to ascertain what was really going on. But this time, there was no way I was going to be bamboozled. Like I could see through, which is just to say, there was no way I was accepting the surface level story. Nothing was adding up right away for me. But I did not have the understanding or the awareness at this point that there was a globalist agenda. Had no clue. No fucking clue. So over the course of the next few years, from 2020 to present, really, I will say 2020, most of 2020 and all of 21 was dedicated in a large part to gaining this awareness, new awareness, hearing all sorts of new voices, paying attention and getting most of all of my media from the alternative sources, because I still didn't have a TV, won't have a TV ever again in my life. So mainstream media has been absolutely gone from my life since 2008 and would never return. So I was getting my information primarily from alternative sources. The only quote unquote mainstream media I was getting was through the way that they were bombarding, most notably social media. So through Facebook posts, through YouTube, and then you get the information almost by what was being censored and what wasn't being allowed on the social media platforms. And a massive reconciliation had begun for me personally. And once 2021 I got through, and I learned some very hard lessons that I won't go into now, but it culminated with attending somewhere in person where I could get an in-person read on, I learned of, consequently, as a part of becoming and gaining all this awareness and then reconciling the awareness and the energies within, I learned of basically two categories of alternative media out there: the spiritualists and the conspiracy theorists, or the truthers. And it was this experience at the end of 21 with a couple that was in person in Miami for the winter solstice that pretty much had me turn off most of the outside voices again, because I am a big proponent of what can we do in our own individual lives. It's not about listening to things outside of us. It's acting within our own individual lives and very much being the change. So at the end of 21, I had this experience, and for the most part, 2022, 2023, and now into early 24, I had turned off most of those outside voices. Now, there is one particular network of voices that has been my primary source, a woman by the name of Emily Moyer out of Austin, Texas. Emily and her network astound me with what I feel to be massive amounts of integrity, intelligence, just principled values, morals, like every single person. Emily, I'm a Patreon supporter of Emily, and have been. She is one of my only, what I do pay attention to now, a great deal of it comes through Emily's network, but it's not 100%. I also listen to a guy named Dr. John Campbell. I also have recently been listening to more of a guy named Jimmy Dore. I have always been a pretty big fan of Roseanne Barr, and she's been pretty vocal throughout this entire campaign. And of course, those latter names are much, much, much bigger. And again, I happen to personally I'm of the smaller. I am of the belief that more intimate people and the knowledge of more everyday people is, I'll say it this way, it's at least equally as valuable as these big names. Now, the big names have a much, 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 obviously, greater influence on the world right now because they're bigger. They've got millions of people that listen to them. And therefore, in my humble opinion, I sort of feel like there's tremendous responsibility that comes with that. And a lot of the voices that I listen to that are bigger, I feel, again, my personal read on them is that these are people that understand that responsibility. But I still like and lean towards the everyday average person, and because that's where I feel the solutions are going to come. They're going to come from us acting as everyday human beings, coming together in our own individual worlds, our own networks, our own communities to be the change that we all desire. And so I am sharing this podcast. I've had as the intention, I'm sharing this episode and trying to reignite my podcast. I've had the intention for, I feel like almost over a year. But as with everything creative, and this I do consider as it's one of my many arms of my work. I recently self-published my first book. I've got an Etsy page with my artwork. I've had a YouTube channel for over 11 years. I have a new podcast with a partner. So I have a lot of various arms of my work that I put out there, but every piece of it has a creative component. And at the core of all of it is a very real soul calling, S-O-U-L. I have been following a massive, since my spiritual awakening, my point of no return spiritual awakening on November 18th, 2010. Everything in my life became dedicated to something much bigger than what I call my character of Alyson, who I am in this one lifetime, in this one time space dimension. My world became much more and beyond Alyson from the moment of that spiritual awakening on November 18th, 2010. And then it went to a whole new level when I started and launched my company of me, Alyson Irene Noune, LLC. When I launched it unofficially on November 30th, 2012, officially meaning a legal business in the state of Florida where I live on January 1st, 2013, that is when my soul took over and would forever be in the driver's seat of Alyson's life. I'm following a deep soul calling, and I believe that at our soul levels, we all chose to be here in our human personality forms at this massive consciousness shifting transitory time on planet Earth. And I have been following this calling and a very clear vision, a vision that actually goes back to when I was a little girl, but became unbelievably clear in certain ways, and they're indescribable with words. But post-awakening, that vision, and I dare say my soul's mission, became what I would spend the rest of this life pursuing and working to manifest. And this podcast, my individual podcast, is very much intended to be rebooted here to complement all the other arms of my work that are happening, including the aforementioned things. And the name of this podcast, Best Damn Reality. I will share in another episode the very real, the multiple, everything I do has multiple reasons for it. multiple. Everything is interconnected, and I would say every choice I make, every action I take, every project I have, I would say is connected to no fewer than 6 other things. And the podcast naming Best Damn Reality, I've never yet fully explained at least one of the ways, the reasons, the connectors, why I named it that. But in one of the ways and reasons I named it this was because of the very real truth with a capital T that I believe we create our own realities. All of reality is an illusion. We live in a holographic universe. And the physical manifestation is the last piece of reality that clicks in. It all comes down to energy, and it begins with our thoughts and our beliefs. And then what we give that attention and that thought and belief and word and action energy towards becomes physical in this realm on planet Earth. And I believe we have tremendous capabilities and powers that have been very purposely blocked and hidden from us collectively for eons on how this reality creation actually takes place. But at the highest level, in the most succinct way to state it, we create our own reality individually and collectively. And I called the podcast Best Damn Reality with the little mini swear word in there of damn for purposeful emphasis to say, damn it, let's wake up and remember our power and realize we can come together to co-create a very different world than the world that we currently live in, which I would argue has gone insane since 2020. We do not have to accept this. We do not have to continue to agree at the mass level to this as our reality. We can come together to collectively agree to defining what we call reality and to manifest it physically in completely different ways than the insanity that continues to build momentum around us. And that is why at the highest level, I named it what I did. We get to make it up. So let's make up the best damn story. Let's get creative and imaginative and out of the mind control programs that have dominated humanity for a very long time. A very long time. Remember our power. Remember ourselves as spiritual beings having a physical experience, and begin to come together to bridge from this current reality, to use the aspects of our current reality to bridge. It's like if you were a trapeze artist and you're swinging and you're in one trapeze and you've got to let go of one trapeze and catch another. We are being called individually and collectively to let go of this reality and to catch another trapeze of a different one. But that is a big ask for a lot of people. Now, I'm not here to speak and to try to convince anybody to see what has so clearly been revealed over the past almost 4 years now. I'm speaking most to those who are fearless and unafraid, and who can see what's happening, even just a little bit, and who want to live in a different, love-based, abundant-based, cooperative, thriving world versus the fear and competition and lack and barely surviving world that surrounds us. I'm speaking to those who want to go to the different version and who are ready to act. So stay tuned. Finally, I get this Best Damn Reality podcast alive again with this episode. Stay tuned, for I will be releasing regular episodes again, starting with today's. Thanks for listening.